New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2018. You're listening to Pleasure Explosion, the original Explosion pod. I'm your host this week, Ashley Hobley. Joining me today, Thomas Marshall.
I'm so hungover.
You sound it. Dylan Blight.
I'm presumably also very hungover.
You don't sound like it.
I'm hurting.
And Nicholas Pryor.
I'm 100% sober. It's a thing.
Well, it's great to have you guys here, buckling up after a big night, I assume. To
It was a banger.
No, I had an early night.
Do you guys have any New Year's resolutions for this year?
I'll tell you when it's close to wait. No, yeah, of course I do. I'll just Yep.
Yep. Do you want to share them? No?
Nah.
Nah.
I've got a funny feeling that as my resolutions solidify over the coming days, because you never actually make them on New Year's Day, it's always the sort of the first couple of days. I feel
it's
like
fluid.
I will probably land on wanting to read more comics.
Oh, really?
Oh, that's very interesting, because today's topic, we're talking about comics. Just full-on nerd episode this week. It's going to be great.
Shock horror. That's
Yeah,
a really
what
I
a-
didn't have any
surprising.
New
What a-
Year's resolutions.
What a crazy... Yeah, well, you had your chance, Nick. You could have jumped in before.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
so
not
I
like
wanted-
Thomas and interrupt people. Except for now.
The fantastic irony.
Yeah. So I just wanted to talk about comics and your comics history, because I think here in Australia, it's not like as big a thing as it is in America, where it seems like there's a comic book shop in every town. They have access to comics everywhere. So I want to know how you guys got into comics, because I feel like I have a sort of odd way of getting into them. So how about we start with
They're
Thomas.
those things that kids read, isn't it?
Yeah,
With
that's true.
pictures in 'em.
I guess in the library you've got your Asterix and your Tintins,
Yeah.
but and
People that can't
Yeah,
read actual
yeah.
books.
your Sunday paper comic strips,
Foot
your
rot
Calvin
flats.
Hobbes.
Yeah, Foot Rot Flats.
I loved Foot Rot Flats, actually. I was obsessed with that as a kid.
So did
and
I.
the
My
movie.
uncle had books.
Yeah. My nan had all of them.
Alright.
Great.
So Dylan-
I never had them.
Dylan, how'd you get into comics?
I was... Let's say I was around 15, 16 when I got into comics, or probably around then, maybe like 14, maybe around like 14 to 16. I'll give myself a wider spectrum. I'd never seen a comic book issue in real life until one day my local newsagent started getting in random issues of DC Comics. For some reason, it was only DC Comics. And the first comic I brought was a Supergirl comic. I can't remember exactly which one. Robin was in it. I just brought it randomly because I was like, oh, comics are... I've always wanted to be in comics. It's just there was no stores here that sold comics at all. Nowhere sold graphic novels or anything like that. If I would have wanted to get graphic novels, I would have had to order them from a store down Hobart when I was a kid or something like that. But I never grew up seeing them locally. Like, I never would walk into stores in town or whatever and see comics and stuff like this. So newsagents start stocking them. They're selling each issue at $6.99.
Yeah,
I
that sounds
think,
about right.
yeah, some ridiculous price that I started buying them at. But yeah, I started for a month and a half to 2 months there. I started buying these single issues of Supergirl, Batman, Superman. I think they were the three they stocked. Just jumping into those from the newsagent at that ridiculous price each. And then a bookstore in town slowly started getting in more and more graphic novels, collector's editions and stuff like that. For some weird reason, it was just like all of a sudden it was like stores in Launceston were like, we're going to start stocking comics. And I started buying like the go-to comics that you needed to read by Googling, like, what are the best Batman comics? What are the best Superman comics? And just going out and buying your Dark Knight Returns, your Killing Joke, all that sort of stuff that I think we'll talk about later a bit more when we go over favourites. But so I started buying all those collector's editions, and then there was about a year or so, a couple of years down the road, as I'd slowly been reading these comics, a eventually a comic book store, quote unquote, it was a guff that started selling comic books here, started selling them, and that's when I probably went full hardcore, because they would get in issues monthly for me. Like, that's when I started having to get long boxes and stuff like that to keep on my subscriptions. And eventually I switched to digital, but that's my comic book story.
Right.
There you go.
Cool. What about you, Nick? What's your history with comics?
I was never a big comics kid growing up. My uncle every week would get the Punisher, not the Punisher, the Phantom. So I'd read the Phantom books when I was at my grandma's, because he lived with my grandma, and he had like collected volumes of Foot Rot Flats, and I'd flick through them, but I never really got into him. Then I think a few years later, I got given like 2 boxes full of those Commando comics, if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, the little comics, and they're like war stories and stuff, and read them. They were okay. And then as a kid, I only ever had one like proper comic book, and I think I got that from a garage sale. It was a Spider-Man versus Venom. Yeah, I don't even know where that is anymore, but I used to read that over and over again. And then I found the Comixology app, and then from there, that's where I've read 99% of all my comics from. Like, I was the same with Dylan. Like, what are the go-to comics to read? Like Dark Knight Returns, Red Sun. Like, I enjoy comics, but now it's not my main form of like, if I have time to read, I'm usually reading a book instead of a comic. I feel like I'm accomplishing more reading a book than a comic, myself personally.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not taking it away from anyone, but that's how I personally feel.
Yeah, they're
I
two
still enjoy
very
them.
different
Yeah.
forms. What about you, Tom? How'd you get into comics?
So it's I think it's reasonably well documented that I don't read, or haven't in the past great many years read very much. So I don't think it would come as much of a surprise to hear that I relatively recently got into comics. And actually the first thing that I bought was The Last of Us, American Dreams. After playing through The Last of Us and Left Behind expansion, loving it, hearing that there was this comic also part of the story set in the universe, I went, oh, that's interesting, I might go check it out. So bought the trade for that, and then I've kind of just been doing my own thing since. Went into Tomb Raider. Claire got me because I enjoyed that game. She, for my birthday one year, picked up the story continuation for that. And then I've haphazardly bought, actually, now that I say it, mostly game-related stuff, so The Witcher as well. And then an arse-load of Star Wars. Earlier this year I got an iPad, found out about Comixology Unlimited, subscribed to that, started making my way through Invincible and various other bits and pieces that are in there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's kind of my brief history with comics, so I'm going to enjoy this as much for listening to people who have read far more comics than I have, and building my own list of what I need to go back and read, as much as it is sharing some of the things that I enjoy about reading comics now, and things that I've found and I love.
Okay, so how I got into comics is I started reading webcomics. So back in the day, people would do webcomics that put out like a strip every day. So things like Control Alt Delete, Sam and Fuzzy, Questionable Content, and Dominic Deegan. I was into that. I'd just read, like, pound through their archive until I was caught up, and then I'd switch over to the next thing and then read through that, and then and Order of the Stick, that's really good. You should look that up. It's a D&D sort of based comic strip. That was really good. But when I got into like mainstream comics, is my library had 3 comic book like graphic novels that I remember. They had Ultimate Spider-Man #1, Volume 1. They had the Nick Fury collection by Jim Steranko, and they had Batman: The Death in the Family, which is the infamous story where Jason Todd dies. Spoilers, everyone.
Yeah. Beat to death.
By the Joker.
Spoilers.
Crowbar. Spoilers.
there was a contest. There was like they had a hotline where people could ring in to if they wanted him to die or not. It's great. It's a great story.
And people said yes, so they killed him. Because that's how you run your comic company.
Yeah.
By polls of if you should kill characters.
Whether they should kill children. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I think I started uni, and there was like, obviously I was living about 45 minutes an hour out from the city before that, so I'd only go into the city for uni, and then I just started getting comic books there because it was a bit closer. But before that, there was a brief period, Dylan, where I was pirating comic books. And
I've done that. No shame.
and
You should have shame because the comic industry is what
No,
as much
because-
as everyone likes to say
No
is
shame.
actually
because
does-
I'm one of the
doesn't
people
do
who
that well
started,
money-wise.
who got into comics because of piracy. So if anything, it just shows that piracy works. It gets people to start buying comics.
Nope.
Yep,
Not true with my piracy, that's for sure.
Nope.
it is when the pirate bay's down. Yeah, so the one that I jumped on is
Pirate
oddly
proxy.
52, which was a weekly series that DC did in 2006. It was like based around a year period where Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman were out of
You
the...
picked the worst fucking thing to
No,
get into
you're wrong.
early in comics.
Yeah, DC.
52 is great. And DC is
Solid.
great.
I nearly every issue of that series physically, I think, and that's like it was a monstrosity to try and keep up with. And if that was like one of the first series you was reading, that is crazy because that is like a very convoluted,
Yeah, I know.
all over the place, a million characters, crossover storylines.
I know, it's great.
Fucking shenanigans.
It just got me into the
Oh.
universe. Because
So, like-
there's all these cool characters and all these interesting... And then I'd read Wikipedia entries on all the people and all the characters. And yeah, so
Have
that
to
was sort of my
read
gateway drug,
Wikipedia to
which is-
keep up.
I'm sure it's like the worst possible one it could have been, but that was what... Because then that got me to go back and read Infinite Crisis and Identity Crisis and the other Crisis storylines, which are a big deal, and obviously DC. Yeah, so that's my entry to comics. So how about we talk about some favorite... let's start with favorite characters. Like, so what characters are your favorites from comics, Dylan?
Batman, Batgirl. Yeah, alright, that's it. Those two are my favorite comics characters.
Yeah, that's it?
Batgirl's my favorite comic character
Right now or always?
of all time.
Yeah, since day dot or...
No, it's not since day dot.
I
Why,
don't know.
does it?
Come
my
out of the
favourite-
womb going, give me that Batgirl.
Yeah, yeah. From the get go, I was like, Batgirl, please. Batgirl's the only character I can like. No, Batgirl's just. Batgirl's my favorite comic character now.
What, Barbara Gordon version or...
Yeah.
No love for any of the other versions?
No.
No, how do you feel about her change from the Oracle?
Hasn't she got a broken back?
No.
She
Yeah,
did.
she's in a
I hate-
wheelchair.
No, she's not.
Yes, she is. She's the Oracle.
Continuity, man.
I prefer Barbara as Batgirl, because she's just I just prefer her getting out there kicking ass and stuff. The current version of Batgirl is my favorite. That's
Yeah, the Burnside side.
But if we want to skip ahead a little bit just to point out a fact, if you want to talk like top 5 comic books of all time to me, the Babs Tarr, Cameron Stewart run of Batgirl where they changed her with the YOLO boots and everything like that. That's my favorite
YOLO
version
boots.
of Batgirl, and that is
YOLO
my
boots.
shut up. That's my favorite. It ruins fucking podcast. We've done 45 fucking podcasts now, and if every time someone points out the fact that I say that word incorrectly, we're gonna have issues. Because look, we're completely sidetracked now.
It's hilarious every
It's
time.
not funny. It's just like move on, forget about it. We'll be at 120 issues. You'll still be like yellow. I'm like, I can't even speak. Dylan, let's talk about your favorite colors. I'm just gonna sit this fucking episode out because you're gonna sidetrack the entire show for 5 to 10 minutes because I can't say one word correctly. Fuck. Batgirl by Cameron Stewart, Babs Tarr. That version is my favorite character. There you go. Thank you very much.
I prefer the Stephanie Brown Batgirl.
Good for you.
Yep. Tom, do you have any favorite comic book characters?
Probably no.
No.
Not in like the traditional comic book sense.
Yeah. What about larger?
Like from picking characters like that. My favorite book that I'm reading at the moment is Kill or Be Killed. So I would probably have to pick the dude in there without picking just a random Star Wars character who is actually not a comic book character. He's a Star Wars character and we're just getting bonus stories.
Okay, what about superheroes in general? Because obviously superheroes is like the major DC, Marvel comic book trope.
For some reason I decided to play as Blade in Marvel Heroes Omega, so maybe he has a particular affinity with me.
Why would that be? Do you like the Blade movies, or it was just the most effective?
I enjoyed them when I was younger. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was probably because he was a cheap one, to be honest.
Some cheap.
What about you, Nick? Do you have any
Absolutely.
favourites?
Spider-Man would be my favourite superhero, but it would not be from Spider-Man comics because I haven't read a whole lot of them. Comic book characters themselves, probably the Punisher, Nova, the Riddler. I forget his name. The main character from Powers. Yeah, probably those.
Yeah. So for me, it's probably Batman, obviously, and Spider-Man. I've read, I looked it up before. I got Marvel Unlimited at one point, and I read through Spider-Man 529 to like 7. I think they did up to 700 is when they stopped the book so they could do the Superior. And
Superior Spider-Man was
Superior is
fantastic.
great. Yeah, that's a great
I
run.
love that.
But yeah, other than that, I like Jamie Madrox. He's the Multiple Man. If you read the Peter David's X Factor run, it's like really great. There's some great moments in there, which I'll talk about a bit later. Yeah, so how about we talk about jumping off Dylan's point, how about we talk about some favorite comics or comic runs? So Dylan,
Don't make me say anything about the Y word, and we'll be good. Or talk about anything that you read when
I
someone
liked
sends it
Daredevil
to you, that
Yellow.
starts
What did
with
you think
L.
about it?
Not doing that either.
No. Okay.
All right, I quickly put together before we recorded what I would consider my top 5 comics, I guess. Number 1 is Batman Court of Owls.
Yeah.
By Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Though that Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo is my favorite comic writing artist duo of all time.
Yep.
Whenever anything they write and do together or what they do, I'm there. It doesn't matter what it is. I don't even need to know what it is. If they were like, we're doing some weird story about blah blah, I don't care. I'm buying it. Those two just work fantastic as far as I'm concerned. And their entire run on Batman's my favorite run on Batman ever. But like just to single it out to a particular storyline, I love the Court of Owls. I love those villains. They're probably my favorite. Oh no, I suppose the Joker's everyone's favorite villain just because he's like such a cool villain, I guess. But it's like such a cop-out answer. But if you exclude the Joker, the Court of Owls is my favorite Batman villain. I just find the whole concept like eerily interesting about this underground conspiracy, and that their masks are freaky as fuck to look at, and it's just everyone has like one comic line story that I feel like once you've read enough comics, I suppose, eventually you get to a stage where there's that one storyline you wish they would use in in a movie or an animated movie or something like that. And the Court of Owls is my storyline. I want them to turn into an animated feature or use it in a Batman solo movie or something like that. That's my dream.
Aren't they using Court of Owls in Gotham at the moment?
It's
Sorry to
not
bring
what
it
I
up.
want.
No.
It's not what I. It's not what I want.
I'm pretty sure the Court of Owls came up in one of the...
Yeah, it
the
was
animated
in one of
ones.
the animated ones,
But
but
not properly.
It was not properly. I mean, just like take the full proper Court of
Yeah.
Owls story and just do it like how it's done. Run it free because they come back later in the series as well when the Joker gets involved in their run as well and stuff like that. So, Dark Knight Returns, one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, possibly one of the best Batman stories of all time. It also in turn made what I consider the best Batman movie of all time, which is the Dark Knight Returns animated movies. You watch those two animated movies back to back. That is the best Batman movie. When people think I'm joking, Dylan, what's the best Batman movie? Is it Dark Knight? Is it Batman Begins? It's Dark Knight Returns, Part 1, Part 2. Watch those animated movies back to back. That's your best Batman experience because it's based on one of the best Batman comic books of all time. It's amazing. Frank Miller did a sequel to it. It's shit. Frank Miller, Dark Knight 3, where he didn't write all of it and stuff like that, was actually okay. But you don't need to read... You don't need to worry about any of the sequel series. You just read The Dark Knight Returns. That's all you really need.
And Year One.
Year One. Well, it's not on my list, but Year One is also good.
Yeah,
yes.
it's good.
It's a good one. And as I mentioned before, the Batgirl, Babs Tars, Cameron Stewart run. That's also just their whole run, but I'd say like the first volume. Just if I was to pick a singular collected edition, I'd just put Volume 1 as my number 3 book. Number 4, I put Scott Pilgrim. Even though some argue it's not a comic, I'm like, well, it is.
It is.
It's not a...
Who says
Just
it's not
because
a
it's
comic?
smaller.
Yeah, I see
don't
people
understand.
argue it's like it's some weird thing. But that's a comic book. Scott Pilgrim. Everyone knows about Scott Pilgrim. I don't think you need to say anything. It's just... I love the movie. I think the comics are better. I think that it's just as funny. I think the only thing the movie helps with that makes it better than reading the comics was actually having that amazing soundtrack. Even though the comics do a good job of trying to get the music in it by having the lyrics, and like you can get into the zone, but it's not as good as watching a movie and actually hearing the music and stuff like that. So that's the plus on the movie side. And then my number 5 book would be Flashpoint, which is just this the best, as far as I'm concerned, DC's best
Event.
big event series book thing, whatever you want to call it. And there's a bunch of separate Flashpoint books they did when the series came out.
The Batman one.
Flashpoint, Batman,
You need to
Flashpoint,
read
blah,
the
blah,
Batman
blah.
one.
There's all these spin-off ones, but I'm just picking the just straight Flashpoint. It is one of the best Flash stories. It's one of the best Batman stories. It's sad as fuck when Batman meets the moment in the book between him and his dad is all kinds of sad and stuff like that. And they're playing with my emotions recently, bringing that back up in stuff they're doing in the comics. But that book is, amazing. So they would be my top 5 comic books. There you go.
I should point out probably spoilers. There'll be spoilers in this episode.
No, they're not really
It's
big
just
spoilers.
yeah. I mean, the history of comics is so long that tough luck. Nick, do you have any favorites, like series or books?
Superman Red Sun. I love that. This how they
course you
subverted
did.
his character and made him a Soviet instead of an American.
It's
Dark
to
Knight
be fair,
Returns.
since you're not, because whenever people describe it like that, they're like Superman, Iran's in Russia, Red Sun, blah blah. Blah. It sounds like more of a joke, whereas it's a very when you read into it, like the political storyline, it's got a message to it, I guess, and stuff like that. It's not a joke book. It's a serious and it's a good book. But it just sounds silly when you describe it as, what if Superman landed in Russia instead of America?
Dark Knight Returns. I can't say anything new about that Dylan has already said. The Walking Dead. That's the only comic that I came up with, issue or trade to trade. I love Powers until they did that soft reboot thing they did. And the Punish and Garth Ennis's run on the Punisher Max.
Yeah,
I love that one too. Other than that, I like them. There's others that I like, but not as much as those.
Cool. What about you, Tom? I know you've got a short history, but do you have anything that stands out so far?
Kill or Be Killed, as I said, that's the first book that I've I picked up sort of the handful of series and just been like, fuck yes, this is something that I go back like the day it releases and basically read it on the way home because I enjoy it so much. That's probably number 1, like top of the list, and I am genuinely just enjoying everything else that I'm getting into. The first 10 volumes of Trades of Invincible are on Comixology Unlimited, and I'm 4 into that. I think I finished 4 of them. That's fantastic. I've done a trade of Southern Bastards, and that's quite good. Recently bought the second and third volumes. All of the Star Wars stuff is great, I think. But just being Star Wars, it's sort of it gets that by default, I think.
Can you back him
to
up,
a certain
Dylan?
extent.
Is the Star Wars stuff good at the moment?
I have two. I just wrote down apart from my top 5, I wrote a list off the top of my head stuff of favorite books, and Star Wars is on the list, just the general Star Wars series, because I think that's generally great. But I think that the best Star Wars comic book they've done so far is the Darth Vader one, which is finished, not the one they've got going now. Which is
I like
just
that
called
one.
Whatever, but it was like Star Wars, Darth Vader. It was a full
Was it Darth Vader
run.
down?
No, that was like a
that was
crossover
part of
event in it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a crossover event in it. But there was a Darth Vader run that is done and finished, and from start to finish, it was nothing but amazing. Like there was no crap issue, and it's the fact it's wrapped up and you can buy the 4 or 5 volumes now, and it's just this. That's a generally great run, I think.
Yeah, I think there's 5 in there,
I think
including
it's
Vader
on
Down.
my Goodreads.
Or maybe there's 5 plus Vader Down, the crossover. I can't remember what they've got. Like Darth Vader, I think is the
new one's Darth Vader.
is the new one, and the old one was just Vader or something like that. So I own, but not surprisingly, I'm sure, haven't actually started those ones. So I have read all of the sort of individual stories or individual characters and keeping up with Poe Dameron. But yeah, the Star Wars and the Vader ones I haven't yet started, but now that I've got them in order on my shelf, I just need to pick them up one after the other and boost through.
Awesome. All right, so some of my favorite ones. Scott Snyder's run with Jock and Francesco Francavilla on Detective Comics. Right before he started with Greg Capullo, he did a run where Dick Grayson was still Batman at the time after events.
I think the best story in that is like there's a run where it's just old Detective Gordon for like 6 to 12 issues or something like that, and it's just a very heavy Gordon-based story. That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's when I started reading Scott Snyder as well, when he was on Detective.
Yeah, he sort of burst on the scene and is like pretty much the Batman guy at the moment, or was till recently.
Yep.
Other than that, Superman's Secret Identity, which is like a Elseworlds take, where Superman, there's a guy in country America who's called Clark Kent, but he lives in a world where Superman's a thing, but he's got Superman's powers. It's great. Currently, Rat Queens is really good. I didn't really like the 3rd volume, but it's like a all-female D&D sort of like action fantasy story. It's really good. Really foul-mouthed and like adult, so that's a good read. Chew, which finished recently, I really love that. It's about a guy who gets superpower, who can, when he tastes something, he can remember the history of whatever he tastes. So it's like, it's like, it is the most bizarre thing because it's like it's set in a world where chicken is outlawed. So there's all these food crimes and stuff.
This is a fucking nightmare.
I know. You're
describing my worst nightmare.
Yeah. But cheese is still very, very much available.
I don't care about cheese.
Fables. I love Fables. That also ended recently. There's like 24 volumes.
Fables. Yeah.
Yeah. It I don't know if it's everybody, but it's, if you love that sort of thing, it's great. Obviously, Scott Pilgrim, Batman Under the Red Hood. I have a soft spot for Jason Todd, obviously.
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah. I saw him die.
Spoilers for Under the Red Hood.
Yeah.
Jason Todd's Under the Red Hood.
He's like a really popular character now. It's crazy. It's like
he is,
because forever it was what was it? It was Uncle Ben, Jason Todd, and Bucky Barnes are the 3 characters you couldn't bring back, and 2 of them are back now, except for the guy.
Yeah, well, can't wait for Uncle Ben to be brought back into comics.
Well, I guess in a recent event he sort of kind of was. They did a the Spider-Verse event. There was an alternate Earth where Uncle Ben survived. And then
count.
Descender by
Descender's good. Yeah.
Descender's really good, and Day Tripper by the Fabio Moon and what's the brother's name? I can't remember. But yeah, that's like a graphic novel. It's really good. 12 issues.
What's it about?
It's I don't want to spoil it, but it's like a guy. He writes obituaries. He's trying to be a writer, and then he dies, and then it's like his life story sort of.
What did you say it's called?
Day Tripper.
Day Tripper.
Yeah, it's really good. Cool.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to. Well, Dylan, you're probably the best person to talk about this, but who are some of your favorite writers for comics? Because
Scott.
yeah. Yeah, Scott Snyder.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be Scott Snyder's all that comes to me. I would say I go to say Frank Miller, but it's like a very asterisk like
At a certain period
80s.
of time. Yeah.
Like it's like Frank Miller during a certain period of time, because you think about Dark Knight and stuff like that, and you can think about stuff like Sin City and whatever else, and then I think about anything Frank Miller's wrote in the last like 20 years of his life, and I'm like, maybe not. So it's like, yeah, I guess.
Didn't like Holy Terror?
Certain point. Jeff Johns.
Yep.
Shout out, of course. He's. I feel like Jeff Johns doesn't get enough credit as he deserves, because he's basically known as like a behind the scenes guy a lot of time. People respect him as this like organizer of DC events and stuff like that.
Well, he is
then
now. But before, he was pumping them out.
Before that, yeah. And he's still, like, he's doing the Watchmen thing.
Yeah.
And...
Is that any good?
Yes, it was amazing. The first issue was absolutely amazing. I loved it.
The which one?
I absolutely
loved
it.
the Doomsday
Watchmen
Clock.
purist. I don't know if I don't like the whole idea.
It was really good. I enjoyed it. So, yeah, I feel like Jeff Johns, for some reason, just... As a writer, I feel like he doesn't get enough shout-out. Like, all the Brightest Day, that whole series and stuff like that.
His Green Lantern run is like his
Green Lantern run is like the Bible for Green Lantern runs.
Yeah.
Because Green Lantern at the time when he jumped on board was a dying character, more or less. Like, no one cared about Green Lantern. Everyone's like, oh, this fucking character. It's like, no one knows what to do about this. Jeff Johns comes in, makes Green Lantern this amazing character, and basically sets up the Green Lantern universe for how it's been and how those characters have been treated ever since. And I don't know, it's just man needs more respect.
Here's why Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern. So thank you, Jeff Johns.
And then I don't know, the last one would probably be Jim Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As a writer.
Some of his, he's pretty well. That's what I was gonna say. It's like, as a writer, because I know he's like helped write. I don't know. It's one of those half-assed answers where it's like, not really writer, but like I know he's like story material, I guess.
Yeah.
Or help with it, and help build characters. Because that's the other thing. I feel like a lot of artists, even if they didn't write stuff, but they help create characters and character backstories and stuff like that. It's like, does that count? Not really, but
no, artists have almost as much.
Yeah, say in character.
So, I was going to bring up artists next,
and,
but that's why.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Do you guys, Tom, Nick, do you have any writers that you?
I have Brian Michael Bendis and Garth Ennis are my favourite writers.
Yeah.
Oh, Mark Millar. Sorry.
Mark Millar, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you read Nemesis? How'd you feel about that?
Yep.
Yeah?
Like it.
You liked it?
I will read, and that's Mark Millar. I don't know why I forgot. I was so focused on DC because I'm like a fanboy. But Mark Millar is like one of the only writers where it's anything he writes, I'll read. Don't care.
You're okay with the incest and the
Yep, love incest.
The inside the womb bomb, I think it was.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
That was crazy.
He's a fucked up writer. I'll read anything. It's fine.
Yeah, that's true.
Has anyone read Saga?
Yes, I've read the first volume. I've got all 7. It's like on my to-do list.
Like, I read the first issue over and over again, and I just can't get into it. And I know it's on all these top-rated lists of all time and stuff.
Yeah, I get through the first volume and then see what if you can get the first volume. But yeah, I guess it's really hard if you can't get through that first issue.
Grant Morrison.
The first volume's on Comixology Unlimited, I think.
Yeah, I'm not paying for Comixology Unlimited.
There's a free trial probably.
$8 a month or something.
I don't read comics enough.
Okay, Tom, have you discerned any writers that you prefer, or
I don't think I'm in a position to
no?
comment on that particularly. No, I think I'm exploring at this point in time.
Yeah. So jumping back to Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison's one of my favorites as well. His run on Batman. That is actually where I came into buying physical. I owned like the first copy of Batman R.I.P. So,
Batman R.I.P. nearly made me hate comics because it was like the third or fourth graphic novel I ever read.
It's
and
like
it was just stupid.
it is
nearly
all
ruined
over
me.
the place. Yeah,
It was
crazy.
the most weirdest. Yeah.
But I liked his Batman Incorporated and Batman and Robin run. That was good. Damian Wayne is probably the best character that's been invented in the last whenever that came out, I think.
Them big words.
That's
but
a big
I'll give you Batman Incorporated was on my list of titles. I wrote down the shout out as well.
Damian Wayne's had the most interesting development of any character. Everybody hated him when he started. When he first came in, everybody hated him, and then by the time things happened, everybody loved him. Or most people.
They killed him for a while.
Yeah. Well, everybody dies
This
in comics.
is where I'm like, is it spoilers if they kill a character, but he's currently alive and on the face of comic book covers? So if someone...
Yeah, that's probably not a spoiler.
This is why comic spoilers are like iffy territory. It's
Jack, just
spoiler
don't listen to that episode.
Is
It's
a
like-
spoiler from the previous issue to the current issue.
Basically, yeah, because then the person's on the front cover and it's like, well... Like, can we talk about that then? Like, it's on the front issue of the cover. It's not a spoiler to talk about the last issue.
It is for Jack.
Yeah, fuck Jack though.
He'll be reading a book and it'll be spoilers.
Oh my god, I'm spoiling this for myself. This is awful.
Oh, why am I doing this to myself? Yeah, Jeff Johns, I mean, he was the writer that was writing the comics I was reading when I was first getting in. So, yeah, Green Lantern, Teen Titans, I love his team of, especially Superboy and Tim Drake Robin. They were the characters I related to. Well, not sort of. Who else is on my list? Brian K. Vaughan, who obviously writes Saga, but also did Why the Last Man, which is probably one of the best comics ever, probably. It's great. Hopefully, I don't know if I want them to do a series on it, if they're a live action adaptation, or just leave it. It's been in development hell forever, but seems like it's getting closer to getting done. Dan Slott, who's been working on Spider-Man for the last forever, he's great. And Paul Dini, he just did a dark
The true story.
Yeah,
that was on my list of books to shout out to. That was my favorite comic book from last year.
Yeah, it is so good. Everybody needs to pick it up. Oh, it just broke me. It was so.
It did. It's
what
very
was
sad.
it again? Sorry.
Yeah. Dark Knight, true Batman story.
Okay.
It's basically an autobiographical. Like, Paul Dini was robbed, like, walking home one night, and this was when he was working on the animated series, and he had like this emotional breakdown where he was, after he got robbed and everything like that and beat up and left on the side of the street, he was kind of like, well, why wasn't there any Batman in the real world to come in and save me? So the comic is like a telling about his psychological struggle after being beaten and left on the side of the street, and then his relationship with Batman as a character and stuff like that. It's just really interesting, and it's a really, really good book. Yeah. So it's not it's not a proper Batman book. It's got Batman in it.
I understand it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's done in a really interesting art style as well. Eduardo Rizzo, I think, did the art, and he's like, there's different licensed characters, I think, that are included in the story that he's done it realistically. So it's really great. Do you have? Yeah, you go, Dylan.
I was about to say, I just keep remembering people want to shout out.
Yeah, that's all right.
Gail Simone.
Yeah, Gail, she's great.
She was writing Batwoman when I started getting into Batwoman.
Oh,
she did a really great run on that.
What, Batgirl or Batwoman?
No, Batwoman.
She wrote the Tomb Raider comics as well.
Yeah.
She writes a lot
the
of
original run
stuff.
of post the first reboot game.
Yep,
which I quite
sound
enjoyed.
about right.
She also wrote Secret 6, which was before the big... That was meant to be really good. I kept hearing about it.
That was really good.
Yeah.
And then she does like Red Sonja and stuff like that, which she also did really good runs on. But she does heaps of comics. But shout out to her as well.
Also, Greg Rucka, he's great. He worked on the 52, and he created Batwoman. in 52, the Kate Kane, and his that elegy trade. Oh, that's some of the best art. Like with J.H. Williams III, it's beautiful. Which brings me on to favorite artists. So do you have some favorite artists, Dylan?
Greg Capullo, Jock, Jim Lee, Frank Miller.
Do you have some
Babs Tarr.
comics to back? Oh, I guess you've mentioned all these stories before.
I've mentioned. Yeah, I know. They're just the ones off the top of my head. My go-tos, I guess. They're all people that've done comics I just mentioned. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know. Currently, my current favorite artist, if you want to go, is Babs.
Yeah.
Because
what's she working on at the moment?
Moto Crush. Like
okay.
I have a separate list of here of like comics I'm currently reading, which are my favorite.
Okay, we'll get to that.
Moto Crush. Moto Crush is one of my favorite comics at the moment. She's working on that, but she also just does. She'll just do cover art for other issues and stuff like that, or variant editions. And it's the only time where I wish I still brought physical comics, because I'd go out and just buy her variant covers for comics just to get her stuff. Something about her style, I'd click with, and I love it so much. So she's my favorite artist at the moment, I suppose. Or Greg Capullo.
Is he doing something? Oh, he's working on metal at the moment.
He's working on metal and with Scott Snyder and stuff. Yeah.
Tom, Nick, do you have any favorite artists? No.
No. It's criminal that I don't pay attention to who the artists are. Like I enjoy the art, but I just take it for granted.
Yeah. No, that's understandable. Tom, have you noticed?
No, not particularly. Again, similar situation. I would probably point out things like one of the reasons I like Kill or Be Killed is the way that it's laid out and the art in it. I quite appreciate. I don't appreciate like the realism almost of the Poe Dameron ones, only because I was reading that today. I thought of it as a bit weird with like it's almost like there's not somebody hand drawing the art. It's like, oh, here's a shot of a scene that we've created somewhere, and I move these little characters around like animated, and then here's just the next shot of them, as opposed to it being more drawn. But yeah,
I'll give a shout out to Jack Kirby, who's especially relevant at the moment because of Thor and Justice League.
Yeah.
Both being in cinemas, and they both use creations of Jack Kirby basically. And Jack Kirby's like, I know, one of the biggest old-time artists, I suppose. But yeah, he's just. I've been looking at a lot of his art lately just because of those movies being in the cinema, and I've just been going back and looking at some of his spreads and stuff like that. So
yeah, one of many comic creators that have been underappreciated, I guess. No, were taken for granted at the time, I think.
Yeah,
I
think so.
Stanley, what are you doing? Some favorite artists of mine: Jamie McKelvey, who regularly works with Kieran Gillen, did Phonogram, is doing Young and the Wicked at the moment, I think it's called. Oh no, The Wicked and the Vine.
The Vine.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I read the first volume the other.
Yeah,
I had it for ages, and I finally got around to reading it. It's really good. And also worked on Young Avengers with Jamie McKelvey, which was a really good run. Oh crap, my phone just. Dustin Nguyen, he's got like a really cool watercolored style I really appreciate. He works on Descender, but he also did like a little Gotham, like fun take on the characters. I really like the art design in that. Francis Manipul, he's another one who works with watercolor. Currently working on Trinity. Also did a great run on The Flash. So Marcos Martin, who did Private Eye with Brian K. Vaughan, also did a run on Spider-Man. He's really great, like really cartoony sort of style. Sean Murphy, he did Punk Rock Jesus, I think, which was a really interesting like reality TV show with like a clone of Jesus. So you can imagine how that went. Yeah, and he's like, I really like his art style. I think he did a couple of runs on American Vampire as well. Did a couple of issues.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, who's the artist on American Vampire?
It's isn't it Francis whatever?
No, it's it's going to kill me. He's really good as well. Tim Sale, who works with Jeff Loeb on a bunch of different projects like
Raphael
Albuquerque. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he's really good. American Vampire was on my list of titles to shout out as well. American Vampire is very good, and it's written by Scott Snyder.
Yeah, what a coincidence.
There's a bit of a theme going on here.
I'm a fanboy. What can I say?
No, Scott Snyder's like the golden child of probably the last 10 years. He seems like a nice dude as well. Yeah, Tim Sale, he worked with Jeff Loeb on a bunch of like Spider-Man Blue, Daredevil Yellow, Hulk Grey, and
all that garbage, weird titles that you just said. What the fuck are they? Real comics?
Yeah, they're like short, like graphic novels, like 6-issue runs. And then he did Superman for All Seasons, which is I really like
that one. That's really good.
Yeah, and there was something. I think he did The Long Halloween. That's it. The Long Halloween and those ones. Yeah, so Tim Sale's really good. Scotty Young, I love his art style. You've probably seen like statues of his Marvel characters, but he's most famously known for doing like the Wizard of Oz adaptations for Marvel, and also doing I Hate Fairyland at the moment. So he's really good. And yeah, that was my list. So Dylan, do you want to shout out the rest of the comic series that you wanted to shout out?
I can quickly go through them.
Yeah.
Jump on board if anyone has anything to say.
Yeah.
I should have been crossing out ones we already mentioned, but I'll just...
that's all right.
Batman Year One was mentioned. We mentioned Batman Incorporated. Nightfall, if you want to read about Batman getting his back broken, that's what you want to be reading for that. The Long Halloween is basically a criminal... I'm basically trying to sell these comics as I go, I guess, to listeners.
You need to read these comics.
You need to read these comics, and here's why. The Long Halloween's basically the mafia mobster Batman story that Christopher Nolan was heavily inspired by for Batman Begins, because it involves a lot of the mob dudes and stuff like that. True Dark Knight story we talked about. Hush is a...
Yes, Hush was Jim Lee.
Yeah, it's a really interesting... I don't even know how to describe it. Someone wears a mask and he looks a lot like Bruce Wayne, and what's going on? That's an interesting thing. Killing Joke, very famous Batman comic that basically everyone knows the story of. Joker shoots Barbara Gordon in that one, and there has that's how she ends up in the wheelchair, and it has this really crazy, weird ending sequence to it. It's also a really short comic, which I think people forget. You can read it in like 30 minutes, I swear, or definitely less than an hour. It's not. Yeah. It's very.
That's why I was surprised they were doing the animated movie of it.
Yeah, I know. That's when they announced it. I'm like, cool. It'll be like a 30-minute movie.
66 pages looking on Comixology Unlimited.
Yeah,
so that's really short.
It's short. Doesn't have much text. It's a lot of great art, and it's a lot of the stories just told in the art and trying to read from the art what the characters are thinking and stuff. It's
just like one bumper issue.
Yeah, it's like a polarizing comic too, of course.
I didn't like it.
I mentioned Brightest Day, Blackest Night. That's one of the... I'm not a big fan of events in general. I don't care... Like Marvel, DC, the Star Wars events. I hate event comics. I hate being forced to buy titles I don't like. I hate them bringing all the characters together in general, because I feel like it always gets sloppy and stuff like that. But Flashpoint and the Brightest Day, Blackest Night stuff are like exceptions to me. Walking Dead, we mentioned. Walking Dead's what you should be reading. You shouldn't be watching that TV show, because the TV show is absolute garbage, and it's nothing like the actually well-written comic book series that is really good.
I've got the first volume, 4 volumes of Walking Dead. I got about 2 issues in, and I'm like... No, 2 volumes in, and I'm like, I don't know, I can't tell any of these characters apart.
Why?
No, just the black and white nature of it, and then they don't... I hate that
persist with it.
Yeah. I might have to go back and retry to get back into it.
No, I've never had this issue, so that's...
Yeah, it was just... I don't know.
The first 10 volumes are on Comixology Unlimited. Ash?
Yeah.
First 10 volumes are on Comixology Unlimited, so just...
Might have to get on that.
Just
get on that.
Borrow,
we are not sponsored by Comixology Unlimited.
Amazon. Get in.
Fucking hell.
Come sponsor us.
Fables we mentioned. I feel like if you played the game, you will. I started reading Fables after playing the Telltale thing.
Yeah.
And if you like the series, I feel like you will like the comic series. It's not as flashy and focused on Bigsby as the game is, the Telltale's Fables game. But if you like that universe and the general idea of the silliness of these characters being brought into the real world and stuff like that,
Bloody Boy Blue.
And then there's a bunch
really
of spin-offs for you to get into if you...
There's a bunch of spin-offs as well, yeah. Sin City is bonkers, crazy. There's I don't even know. If you've watched the movie, you should really read the comics too to get a bit more of it. Especially if you love Sin City 1 and you didn't like Sin City 2, go read the comics that they based Sin City 2 off, because it wasn't as good as the first one. Watchmen is...
It's kind of required reading.
It's required reading for comic books.
I reckon the
really.
movie did it better.
I mean, it's
makes
a
more
lot
sense, I
easier.
guess.
The movie's easier to intake than the comic, I guess.
Yeah.
The comic book's definitely Alan Moore.
Plus
and here's
those,
my thing. Alan
older-
Moore is batshit crazy. Let's be honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
He is the most batshit crazy person alive today writing comics.
And
still.
plus these days, it's very hard to go back to those early 80s comics, the style that they'd done.
Yeah.
the
Like
very
with like
small
a whole
squares and-
like 3 paragraphs of text in one little
Yeah.
fucking speech bubble. And
Yeah. There's
the
also
art style
sections
is
of that
very-
where it's basically a book. So
Yeah.
it's like a crossover between stuff. But I still feel like it's required reading if you're getting into comics. Or if you watch the movie, I think it's definitely worth giving the book a go. The Wake
Yeah.
is written by Scott Snyder. Let's just include everything that's written by Scott Snyder. It's like the water. I don't know how to describe it without spoiling it. It's like Water World but better. I don't know. It's great.
It's a horror one.
Kick-Ass
Kick-Ass.
is as good as the movie. I feel like the sequels to the Kick-Ass 2, Kick-Ass 3, and the Hit Girl spin-off aren't as good as the first Kick-Ass volume, but Kick-Ass 2, the movie, wasn't as good as Kick-Ass 1, the movie, so it's just how it works. In general, I think you should, if you want to get into fun, ridiculous, silly comics, Mark Millar is like someone you should just be looking up, because most of his comics get turned into movies, and the rights to them before the comic series are even coming out these days are just becoming movies before the series is coming out, but the comic series are always way different than the actual movie, so it is worth actually reading both. Like the Secret Six, which is what they based Kingsman off, is absolutely nothing like what Kingsman is. It's like the bare bones plot of Secret Six is used to create the Kingsman comic. But if you like the Kingsman movie, it's well worth reading the Secret Six and stuff like that.
Well, they're all going to be Netflix series now because he sold
the rights. It's just weird, confusing thing.
Yeah.
Preacher
Mm-hmm.
is well for reading. I especially feel like if you're loving their TV show these days. I haven't actually finished the Preacher run yet, but the first book it's
great.
Just stands out on its own as this quite ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
We shout out American Vampire. Shout out to Grayson, which I felt like was a highly underappreciated run in the New 52 era, where everyone thought Dick Grayson, Nightwing, was dead, and he basically gets hired by this secret service group to become a secret agent, and Grayson is Dick Grayson just being an agent going off doing like missions. Like he's not in a suit or anything. He's just like a dude with a gun. He's being a bit of a spy, and I think it was everyone like the comics industry in general, especially fans, don't like change, and whenever there's change, people spit it, and that's gonna kill the comics industry because people only want the same shit over and over and over. And when they do different interesting things with characters, people just spit it, and it's like comics like Grayson get underappreciated, I suppose. I shouted out Vader already. Old Man Wolverine's my one Marvel shout out.
Yeah.
Old Man Logan. It's like
I've always thought Marvel's better at like the runs of comics, but there's not like set trades that you can give to people because they're so in their continuity. It's difficult.
Yeah. It's like the only other Marvel comics I ever enjoy are like Uncanny X-Men, Astonishing X-Men.
Yeah,
like I got into X-Men stuff, but in general, Marvel stuff I don't enjoy for that reason, because Marvel stuff always feels like a big crossover event constantly. I always feel like I should be reading like 6 other books anytime I need to be reading one book, and that's not how I want to read comics. And my current favorites, which is comics like ongoing at the moment, I just wanted to shout out, as I mentioned before, were Motor Crush, which is it's like a neon future where there's like a whole bunch of bike racing happening, and that's like part of the main world. And they put like this liquid stuff into their bikes. It's basically NOS, except for the main character needs it to live basically, and we don't know why so far. It's only up to 7 issues out at the moment, so you can catch up fairly quickly and get on board with Motor Crush. Sex Criminals, which I've pumped on several podcasts.
I read that on the airplane. I'm like, I shouldn't be reading this on the airplane.
No,
Like,
you can't read it.
no,
Sex
yeah.
Criminals is
And
a
on
comic
like
you
a
cannot read
Kindle
in
as well. I'm
public.
like, no.
Yeah, it is. Every time I say it, it's everyone laugh like I'm joking, but Sex Criminals is like one of the funniest, most ridiculous worlds you can currently read in comics. But yeah, don't read that in public because there's a whole bunch of dicks and a whole bunch of dicks.
Every other body part.
Whatever else, every other. There's just you'll look like a weirdo if you're reading that one out in the school park. Bitch Planet is one of my favorite comic books. Has been for like the last couple of years. It's basically dystopian future where it's women's worst nightmare, where men basically, it's Donald Trump rules the world, and if women don't do what they're told in the kitchen, they basically get sent off to a prison land where it's called Bitch Planet, and that's where they have to live. And it's
This came out before Donald Trump was president.
Yeah, well, yeah, it came out before he was president. My favorite thing about the comic, though, is like the story is really interesting, and obviously, if you're easily turned off by like the feministic ideals and obvious storytelling, that's obviously what this is, because it's not trying to hide what it is. It's very obvious what it is. If you're gonna get into reading it, I highly suggest getting the single issues, because when you read them single issues, each time they have Kelly Sue, who's the main writer, has like a new person. Yeah. She has a new person come in to write a essay at the end of each issue about feminist beliefs, political stuff, gay rights, all your typical SJW, whatever you want to laugh, make jokes about, that type of stuff. There's a really good like 3 to 4 page essay at the end of every issue, which is like one of my favorite parts of reading the comics. For some reason, these essays are absent from the collector's editions, like the volume. So I feel like buying the single issues is a must if you want to get into that, because you're missing half of what makes those comics great. Star Wars series you should be reading. Poe Dameron I think is great. And then the Wonder Woman Rebirth series at the moment is one of DC's best comic books, because they started this series with this crossover. They retold Wonder Woman's origin story, and then every 2 weeks they cut back to a current storyline, and then they'll cut back to her origin story. And I think it's been my favorite Wonder Woman story I've read ever since I got into comics.
I was going to pick
That
up
are my picks.
I was going to pick up Wonder Woman Year 1, but it's got a 2 on the side.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm like, do I want to invest? Do I?
No.
Yeah. So should I? No. Yes.
No. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
You get the first one.
Get the first 2 issues, volumes, just so
Yeah.
it looks nicer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some other ones to recommend. Obviously, Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run. That's great. Specifically, pick up Rebirth and Sinestro War. Those are the ones you really need to pick up. Jeff Johns' JSA run. He did a run on Justice League of Society. I like that. Also, Justice League Lightning Saga. That's a bit of a team up between the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes from the future. And Superman and the Legion of Superheroes. That's really good. Jeff Johns did that, where Superman gets taken to the future, bunch of futuristic superheroes and stuff. Yeah, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. I think you've covered pretty much every comic book ever. So, to sort of round out the show, I wanted to bring it back.
I've got one to say.
You've got one?
Yeah, it's called Bedlam. It's by a guy called Nick Spencer. It's kind of like a Joker type character. 10 years later, he's gotten better, in quotation marks, and he starts helping the Bedlam Police Department with like profiling and all that kind of stuff. And it is fucking out there, sick and disturbed. But unfortunately, he got put in indefinite hiatus after 14 issues, so it's kind of like up in the air.
Yeah,
so
it's a shame.
Yeah, but that's one of my favorite comics ever. So
I will give the shout out again for
Kill or Kill Boo.
Kill or Be Killed. I don't think any of you have read it.
I've read the first 3-4 issues or something.
Yeah. Well, it's up to 13 now, so you're behind.
Yeah, I am behind.
So it is like it's a kid in New York, I think, tries to kill himself, but he is saved by a demon who, in repayment for saving his life, has to kill somebody every month. So once a month, he has to kill somebody for this demon.
You get the title, guys. Do you get the?
What was it called?
Do you get
Kill or Be Killed?
Oh.
Okay.
I understand
now.
So yeah, he
Yeah, I just remembered a couple I was going to recommend. New X-Men run by Grant Morrison, where he introduced like the yellow uniforms, like uniform. Everybody wore yellow. It wasn't like the individual. It was really good.
They wore what colour, sorry?
Sorry? Yellow?
They wore what colour, sorry? Oh.
Yeah, Dylan, do you know what colour that is?
Nothing.
Yellow.
Nothing.
Yellow.
I like it where they wear all black.
It was black and yellow. Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley.
Wiz Khalifa.
His follow-up to Scott Pilgrim. I really enjoyed that.
I really appreciated that.
Yeah,
You're learning, young Padawan.
I'm completely oblivious to what you guys
Continue. I did a Tom. No, let's take this moment to give me my proper props. Tom usually does the thing where if someone says a song title, he'll say the artist name. You said the black and white word, and I said Wiz Khalifa.
Yeah.
Oh, God. So
Wrap up the show. We're going to shit. It's too hot.
Before we wrap up, I want to bring up one thing that Nick sort of mentioned before, where he doesn't think comics are the same as books.
Yep.
It's not that I don't think they're the same as books. I just think I am better spent my time reading a book than a comic.
Is it because of the artwork? Because
No,
we had mentioned
no,
before that
I don't know.
you don't really know a lot of artists. You don't mention...
It's not to do with the artwork at all. Like, the artwork's fantastic, and I love reading comics when I read them, but I just feel like comics as a whole are just so convoluted to get into. Like I try to read a run, and you got to go... Even that Darth Vader run, you had to buy a Star Wars issue, that Vader Down issue, that, and another one of that. It's just... I don't know.
But there's like a ton of independent comics now. Like, the most amount of independent comics ever are being made right now. Image Comics is like almost as big as DC or...
books more.
Yeah, if you want to talk about like getting into comics and stuff like that, everyone who wants to get into comics usually starts with superheroes because that's like the go-to thing. Mm-hmm. However, superhero comics, DC and Marvel, are the most convoluted, stupid mess of anything that you could possibly try and get into. And you are better just walk into a comic book store, just walk past all that shit, find the image section, and start there. And that's your answer.
That's why the best books are standalones, like Red Sun, Batman Returns, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like you're basically saying that comics to you are lesser forms of storytelling because they don't look as big and flashy, like they don't take the amount of time and investment or something like that.
It just comes down to the simple fact is I enjoy reading books more than I read comics. Yeah. Like how Tom enjoys playing games more than he does watching movies. I'm not taking anything away from it. It's just what I prefer to do.
No, that's fair. That's a fair argument. One last thing. I want to talk about favorite moments in comics because I just remembered like the most batshit crazy thing that I ever read in a comic book. It was a comic series called Rise of Arsenal. Mm-hmm. And Arsenal's daughter died in like a horrific accident. No, it was like a big explosion.
Do you want to say who Arsenal is before people keep thinking you're talking about arse?
Arsenal is Green Arrow's sidekick or former protege.
Was his was his sidekick and is now his own
and
superhero. His name's Arsenal.
Arsenal, yeah. He shoots stuff. He definitely shoots stuff because at one point he infamously was a drug addict. Reformed, his daughter dies, he gets back on the drugs, and then goes fighting crime with a dead cat. So, yeah, that's one of the craziest things.
What?
Oh, God.
Yeah, he got drugged out. Yeah, what about you, Dylan? So,
from the top of my head, and it would be most recent, I mean, there's probably more if I spent more time trying to think about it, but just like straight come to head would be reading the standalone DC Rebirth issue, the standalone comic that they put out, what was it, like 2 years ago? Are we approaching 3 years? I don't know. But the issue they put out, the Rebirth comic storyline that they put out before the big Rebirth event happened, and reaching the end of that comic and having been like, like, are they bringing Dr. Manhattan? Like,
Oh, okay.
are they bringing is that where, because that's where that all basically started getting hinted at, and like just having the whole universe come back in. That whole comic was full of like having Wally West burst back in, through through to Batman's office, having the smiley face, was it the badge? No, the coin.
Pin,
Button.
badge.
The pin,
Button.
yeah. Having that
Button.
like fly out and land, and Batman like pick that up and stuff later. Like my most what the fuck comic book moments have all been DC's for like the last couple of years as they've started the Rebirth storyline, and as they've started building it towards the Watchmen comic that started the a couple of weeks ago by the time this comes out, I suppose, or a month ago. As they've been slowly building towards this, that all started with Rebirth, where they had characters come back in and tease this overlapping universe, and just basically blowing my mind with the idea of that the whole reason that the DC universe years and years ago got even formed into the New 52 was because Dr. Manhattan, how it was like behind the scenes, fucking with everyone's timelines, and now it's all... It was... Yeah, I got really excited about those moments. And also that comic made me cry because there's a moment between like Wally West and the Flash.
Yeah, when he came back.
Yeah,
That's great.
When he came back, yeah. That comic is what... If you're like, what's your favourite comic the last how many years, Dylan? It's probably that Rebirth issue because it shocked me, it got me excited, it made me like go read internet forums like a crazy maniac person, and yeah, just hit me on all sorts of levels. So
Flashes, they just love coming back. And shout out to my comic book store, Comics Etc. in Brisbane. Dylan, do you want to... do you have a local...
Comixology.com.
Yeah. Or King's Comic in Sydney, that's a good shop as well.
Sure.
Infamous, important place in the Explosion Network history.
It is indeed. It's where we picked you up, Ash.
Yeah.
That's where he picked your sorry ass up in a comic book store.
Awesome. So well, let's wrap it up. Nick, where can people send you comic book recommendations?
You can send me comic book recommendations at don't@explosionnetwork.com.
And what if they just want to tweet at you?
Don't.
Tom, where can people find you on the internet?
You could find me at Graphic on Cuba Mall in Wellington, or Tom DeBomb 89, TOMDABOM 89.
Oh, sorry, I should have asked you if you wanted to shout out your comic book store.
I didn't. That's fine.
Dylan, where can people fight you about your DC fandom?
You can tweet at me, Vivaladil, VIVALADIL. I'm probably tweeting a lot about this Watchmen storyline until it finishes, because it's currently my favourite thing happening in comics. So yeah,
in 2018.
If you hate me and you hate that they're doing more Watchmen stuff like that, yeah, just tweet at me how much it sucks, and I'll probably just mute you, to be honest.
That's fair. You can follow me on Twitter at Ashley Hobley, ASHLEYHOBLEY. It's a thing. You can follow the show on Twitter at Explosion Pod, or on Instagram. Again, if people start following, maybe we'll start posting stuff there. Maybe we already have. I don't know. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Explosion Network. Hey, why don't you head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star review for Pleasure Explosion? That'd be really nice. That
can be a New Year's resolution.
Yeah, that'd be a great way to start the year. You know, just go like all the podcasts that you like. Let them know that you appreciate them.
Or just ours, that's fine.
Or just specifically the ones made by the Explosion Network.
Definitely not somebody else's from this recommendation and not ours, but ours and somebody else's is acceptable.
That is acceptable. And you can always find all our awesome content at explosionnetwork.com. The only place you need to really go to. Guys, that's the show.
Happy New Year!
YOLO!
Read more comics. They need... it's a dying industry.
Specifically, buy them and then read them. Don't pirate them and then read them. Thank you.
Hey, it's Ashley here to let you know what you can expect from the Explosion Network in January. Feeling nostalgic for 2017 already? Then you should check out the Explosion Network's Best of 2017 Top 10 lists over at explosionnetwork.com. We'll let you know the best games, movies, TV, and more from last year. Got some disposable income that's burning a hole in your pocket? Then why not spend it on some sweet Explosion Network merch? Head over to designbyhumans.com/shop/explosion network. Pick up a shirt or a mug or a hoodie or even a sticker. They're all things that you can buy on the shop and they mail out to you. It's crazy. Of course, our weekly shows continue. Pleasure Explosion Mondays, Platinum Explosion Tuesdays, and Grandstand Gurus Thursdays, each at 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. Catch our live streams on twitch.tv/Explosion Network and keep your targets locked on explosionnetwork.com for all our explosive content. Plat plat. Sound effects. I don't know how to end this ad read. Good luck editing this, Dylan.